all over the world, in the States, in San Francisco itself, in London, in Dublin, all over. So it's going to be a great commemoration of the passing of a really important character in American culture of the 20th century, and indeed across the world. So, I mean, I first came across Ferlinghetti's poetry together with the poetry also of Ginsberg and Corso in this iconic sort of paperback, really. Penguin Modern Poets put out a whole series, and they were on it. So this was what, about 1963. I was 14. It was the year after the Cuban Missile Crisis, where for several days the world had come closer to nuclear war than ever before. And in that sort of a world that seemed to me as a teenager to be dangerously unstable and run by violent rulers, it was really liberating to hear voices which condemned not only war, but the whole system that created war. And so it was through really the poetry of Ferlinghetti and the others that I began a process really of understanding that you can rebel. Actually, you can rebel against a system that you think is wrong. And it was also through the poetry of Ferlinghetti and the others I first heard of the beat movement. And the word beat is wonderful because it means so many things. You know, it can mean exhausted, at the bottom of the world, sleepless, alienated by society, but it also meant perceptive, wide open, receptive to a vision of a new and better world, and of course, beatific. You know, Ginsberg and Ferlinghetti have used it in that sense, and Kerouac. Beatific, transcendent, illuminating the darkness. And then in 1965, we had the International Poetry Incarnation at London's Albert Hall. Were you at that, John? Yeah, no, you moved it, it's okay. But that was...
Sorry, Tim. I wasn't there, but Jill was there.
Jill was, yeah,
quite famously because of the dancing.
That's right, because she was dancing, yeah. And so, I mean, that was an amazing event, really, and was central to acting as a platform, really, for the development of a counterculture. And Ginsberg and other beats met up with progressive British poets like Adrian Mitchell, and there was a tremendous fusion there. In '67, I heard Ginsberg reading at Chalk Farm in the Round House. Again, that was amazing. He started off with Tibetan prayer symbols and paraded around the whole place 3 times, and then up onto the platform and straight into a howl. Incredible. And finally, in '68, a bunch of us drove cross-country across America from New York in what was essentially a pilgrimage to San Francisco. Actually, at that time, then to Haight-Ashbury, where the whole hippie, actually the radicalism of the beat scene was morphing into the so-called hippie counterculture. So Ferlinghetti was not only a poet, he ran City Lights bookstore in San Francisco. He was busted for publishing Allen Ginsberg's Howl. and he remained a radical all his life, unlike certain other beats like Kerouac, who became horrible politically. And he hosted political meetings at City Lights against the Vietnam War and for many other causes and many other of the injustices of what at the time we called the system, and which now I would call capitalism. And for him, poetry was a weapon. He gave us a people's poetry that intersected with politics. And he called it poetry as insurgent art. And he called on us to join with him in its celebration. He wrote this in 2007. And it's called I'm Signaling You Through the Flames. I'm signaling you through the flames. The North Pole is not where it used to be. Manifest destiny is no longer manifest. Civilization self-destruct nemesis is knocking at the door. What are poets for in such an age? What is the use of poetry? The state of the world calls out for poetry to save it. If you would be a poet, create works capable of answering the challenge of apocalyptic times, even if this meaning sounds apocalyptic. You are Whitman, you are Poe, you are Mark Twain, you are Emily Dickinson and Edna St. Vincent Millay. You are Neruda and Mayakovsky and Pasolini. You are an American or a non-American. You can conquer the conquerors with words. So that's a good kickoff, I think. It's going to be a great celebration this afternoon of, we've got some brilliant poets with us. I hope all of them do remember to turn up. So it's going to be a great celebration of Ferlinghetti's life and his work and of the whole beat movement of revolt, resistance, and revolution. So I'll just give you a read of who is in the running order, okay? So we're going to start with Dane. Then we're going to have, if they're there, of course, we've got to be flexible on this, but the running order is Dane, Derek Coyle, Pankhuri Sinha, Christine Hall, Mark Simmons, John Molyneux, and Tish Camp. And then we'll have a 5-minute break. And then, Roger, you'll be kicking off the second half of this. Okay, so I want to call then, first of all, on Dane Ince, a citizen of San Francisco, well familiar with the scene there and with City Lights Bookstore itself. So I'll call on Dane. There you go, man. Great to see you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. It's really a great honor to share in this. I have a couple of pieces that I'd like to read. The Changing Light. The changing light at San Francisco is none of your East Coast light, none of your pearly light of Paris. The light of San Francisco is a sea light, an island light, and the light of fog blanketing the hills, drifting at night through the Golden Gate to lie on the city at dawn, and then the halcyon light late morning after fog burns off and the sun paints white houses with the sea light of Greece, with sharp, clean shadows, making the town look like it has just been painted. But the wind comes up at 4 o'clock, sweeping the hills, and then the veil of light, early evening, and then another scrim when the new night fog floats in, and in that veil of light, the city drifts anchorless upon the ocean. Oracle, of Delphi. Great oracle, why are you staring at me? Do I baffle you? Do I make you despair? I am Americus, the American, wrought in the dark, and my mother long ago from the dark of ancient Europa. Why are you staring at me now in the dusk of our civilization? Why are you staring at me as if I were America itself, the new empire, vaster than any ancient days, with its electronic highways, carrying its corporate monoculture around the world, and English, the Latin of our days? Great oracles sleeping through the centuries, awaken now at last and tell us how to save us from ourselves and how to survive our own rulers. Who would make a plutocracy of our democracy in the great divide between the rich and the poor, in whom Walt Whitman heard America singing, "Oh, long silent Sybil, you have the winged dreams. Speak out from your temple of light," as the Sirius constellation with Greek names still stare down on us as a lighthouse moves its megaphone over the sea. Speak out and shine upon us the sea light of Greece, the diamond light of Greece. Far-seeing Sybil from forever hidden, come out of your cave at last and speak to us in the poet's voice, the voice of the fourth person singular, the voice of the inscrutable future, the voice of the people mixed with wild, soft laughter, and give us new dreams to dream, give us new myths to live by. Thank you.
Two wonderful poems. Are you done, Dan, or are you? Cool. Right. We will get a chance actually to hear Dan at the end as well. So, okay. Next, is Derek Coyle in the house?
I am here, Tim. Thanks for that.
Excellent. Okay, try to keep to the 5 minutes so that we can fit everybody in. But off you go, man. Over to you.
No worries at all. So here we go. It's a poem from the early 60s from Ferlinghetti called Underwear. I didn't get much sleep last night thinking about underwear. Have you ever stopped to consider underwear in the abstract? When you really dig into it, some shocking problems are raised. Underwear is something we all have to deal with. Everyone wears some kind of underwear. The Pope wears underwear, I hope. The governor of Louisiana wears underwear. I saw him on TV. He must have had tight underwear. He squirmed a lot. Underwear can really get you in a bind. You have seen the underwear ads for men and women, so alike, but so different. Women's underwear holds things up. Men's underwear holds things down. Underwear is one thing men and women have in common. Underwear is all we have between us. You have seen the three-color pictures with crotches encircled to show the areas of extra strength and three-way stretch, promising full freedom of action. Don't be deceived. It's all based on the two-party system, which doesn't allow much freedom of choice, the way things are set up. America, in its underwear, struggles through the night. Underwear controls everything in the end. Take foundation garments, for instance. They are really fascist forms of underground government, making people believe something but the truth, telling you what you can or can't do. Did you ever try to get around a girdle? Perhaps non-violent action is the only answer. Did Gandhi wear a girdle? Did Lady Macbeth wear a girdle? Was that why Macbeth murdered sleep? And that spot she was always rubbing, was it really in her underwear? Modern Anglo-Saxon ladies must have huge guilt complexes, always washing and washing and washing. Out damn spot. Underwear with spots, very suspicious. Underwear with bulges, very shocking. Underwear on clothesline, a great flag of freedom. Someone has escaped his underwear. Maybe naked somewhere, help! But don't worry, everybody's still hung up in it. There won't be no real revolution. And poetry still the underwear of the soul, and underwear still covering a multitude of faults in the geological sense. Strange sedimentary stones, inscrutable cracks. If I were you, I'd keep aside an oversized pair of winter underwear. Do not go naked into that good night. And in the meantime, keep calm and warm and dry. No use stirring ourselves up prematurely over nothing. Move forward with dignity, hand in vest. Don't get emotional, and that shall have no dominion. There's plenty of time, my darling. Are we not still young and easy? Don't shout. Oh, there you go. Thanks very much, Tim.
Brilliant. That's cool. That is really fantastic. I was thinking of reading that, but I didn't have the nerve. That's brilliant. Thank you. That was Derek Coyle from Carlow in Ireland.
Carlow, Ireland, just south of Dublin here in the sunny out southeast today. So lovely to meet you all around the world. Thank you.
Brilliant. That's
There's
great.
at least 3 of us from Dublin, Tim. Oh no,
Right,
Kieran,
yes,
Kieran
yes.
down there has moved. He's a
We have a really multicultural list here, lineup. It's fantastic. And we also have is next up, is Pankuri with us? Is Pankuri in the house? Excellent.
Sir, yes, good evening to you.
Excellent. This is Pankuri Sinha from India. So over to you, Pankuri. Off you go.
Well, thank you so much. I am really honored to be here, and hello to everybody. And here is the poem that I selected to read in honor of Lawrence. I don't know if I'm saying his last name right, Ferlinghetti. Ferlinghetti, right. So this is a short one. It's called People Getting Divorced. People getting divorced, riding around with their clothes in the car and wondering what happened to everyone and everything, including their other pair of shoes. And if you spy one, then who knows what happened to the other, with tongue alack and years later, not even knowing if the other ever found a mate without splitting the seams, or remained intact, unlaced, and the soul, the soul, a curious conception, hanging on somehow to walk again in the free air once the hem has been replaced. So I think I will just
Beautiful.
read. Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah,
Thanks.
you have more time.
Okay.
You're welcome to read something else. You've had about a minute, so you've got another 4 minutes.
Okay, thanks. Then I will read this one. In Goya's greatest scenes, we seem to see.
Oh, beautiful. Go ahead.
Thanks. In Goya's greatest scenes, we seem to see the people of the world. The people of the world exactly at the moment when they first attained the title of suffering humanity. They read upon the page in a veritable rage of adversity heaped up, groaning with babies and bayonets under cement sky, in an abstract landscape of blasted trees, bent statues, bat wings and beaks, slippery gibbets, cadavers and carnivorous cocks, and all the final hollering monsters of the imagination of disaster. They're so bloody real. They're so bloody real, it is as if they really still existed, and they do. Only the landscape is changed. They are still ranged along the roads, plagued by legionnaires, false windmills, and demented roosters. They're the same people, only further from home, on freeways 50 lanes wide, on a concrete continent spaced with bland billboards illustrating imbecile illusions of happiness. The scene shows fewer tumbrils but more strung out citizens in painted cars, and they have strange license plates. And they have strange license plates and engines that devour America. Thank you.
That's absolutely
Thank you so
splendid,
much.
incredible poem. Okay, that's fantastic. Thank you so much, Pankuri, for joining us today.
Thank
We
you.
really appreciate it. Thank you. So we now move to Nashville in the USA and to Christine Hall. Christine, are you with us? Are you in the house?
I am. Thank you. Hello. Thank you, Tim.
Christine runs the Brew poetry night running from Nashville, and so over to you, Christine. You got about 5 minutes, so hit it.
Thank you so much. I'm really grateful to be here with you all. My first experience with the Beats was around the time I was 16 and made my first trip to San Francisco and visited City Lights and sat there in the back copying certain poems that I didn't have a budget for buying books. That trip was on someone else's coin, but I was quite obsessed with what I found there. I chose one from Richard Brodigan, who is not properly a beat poet, and I have one from Gary Snyder as well. They were both quite associated with the scene and wrote working man's poetry. I love the perspective that it offers.
Yeah.
All watched over by machines of loving grace by Richard Brodigan. I like to think, and the sooner the better, of a cybernetic meadow where mammals and computers live together in mutually programming harmony, like pure water touching clear sky. I like to think, right now, please, of a cybernetic forest filled with pines and electronics where deer stroll peacefully past computers as if they were flowers with spinning blossoms. I like to think it has to be of a cybernetic ecology where we are free of our labors and rejoined back to nature, returned to our mammal brothers and sisters, all watched over by machines of loving grace.
Brilliant. Great.
And from Gary Snyder, hay for the horses. He had driven half the night from far down San Joaquin through Mariposa, up the dangerous mountain roads, and pulled in at 8 a.m. with his big truckload of hay behind the barn. With winch and ropes and hooks, we stacked the bales up clean, the splintery redwood rafters high in the dark, flecks of alfalfa, whirling through shingle cracks of light, itch of hay dust in the sweaty shirt and shoes. At lunchtime, under black oak, out in the hot corral, the old mare nosing lunch pals, grasshoppers crackling in the weeds. I'm 68, he said. I first bucked hay when I was 17. I thought that day I started, I sure would hate to do this all my life. And damn it, that's just what I've gone and done.
Brilliant. Fantastic. Right. Yeah. Okay. That's brilliant. That's excellent. Thank you so much, Christine. I particularly liked the Snyder one. I thought that was great. That was really, really good. They were both brilliant, actually. Okay, next we have Marky Mark Simmons, hailing from Northampton, am I right?
That's right, yes.
Brilliant. Okay, off you go, Marky.
Okay, I've chosen one by Alan Ginsberg, and it's How, which is very long, so I'm not going to do the whole amount. I'm going to do a segment of it, and really because it's about this was quite a controversial poem that was published and caused Ferlinghetti to land up in court over it, but also because it represents how the Beats poets wrote, and they actually used free verse, which is something that I write in. It really sort of resonates with me. This is called How. I saw the best minds of my generation destroyed by madness, starving, hysterical, naked, dragging themselves through the Negro streets at dawn looking for an angry fix. Angel-headed hipsters burning for the ancient heavenly connection to the starry dynamo in the machinery of night, who poetry and tatters and hollow-eyed and high sat up smoking in the supernatural darkness of the cold water flats, floating across the tops of the cities, contemplating jazz, who barred their brains to heaven under Eid and saw Mohammedan angels staggering on the tenement roofs, illuminated, who passed through the universities with radiant cool eyes, hallucinating Arkansas and Blake light tragedy amongst the scholars of war, who were expelled from the academies for crazy and publishing obscene odes on the windows of the skull, who cowered in unshaven rooms in underwear, burning their money and waste baskets and listening to the tenor through the wall, who got busted in their public beards returning through Laredo with the belt of marijuana for New York, who are fire in the paint hotels or drank turpentine in Paradise Alley, death or purgatorized their torsos night after night, this dream with drugs, with waking nightmares, alcohol and cock and endless balls, incomparable blind streets of shuddering cloud of lightning in the mind leaping towards poles of Canada and Parsons, illuminating all the motionless world of time between. Payat solidities of halls, the backyard, green trees, cemetery dawns, wine drunkenness over the rooftops, storefront boroughs of teen joyride, neon blinking traffic lights, sun and moon and tree vibrations in the roaring winter dusks of Brooklyn. Thank you. One of the things that that this guy was quite famous for under Beats poets was actually writing streams of consciousness and then leaving it there. So they kind of didn't even go back and edit it. They just wrote what they felt and left it on the page. And I think that's quite apparent from that poem, that's what he had done. And it's absolutely amazing how much power is in that poem, and really speaks to people about the life that they believe they were leading.
Absolutely. It is an absolutely incredible poem, and I still have the copy of the book, which I bought way back. Moving quickly along, I think next we will have from Dublin, we'll have my friend John Molyneux, who's I just want to plug his book, The Dialectics of Art, that just came out. So you can get it from Bookmarks. So there you go. I have a copy right here. Excellent book. Highly recommended. So comes our bookmarks immediately after we finished. So over to you, John. Oh, you need to unmute.
Yeah, I'm getting it.
Cool.
Thanks, Tim. Thanks for the plug. The poem I'm going to read, also by Ginsberg, from the end of that little Howl collection, is called Song, and I chose it because when Tim and I, we're old friends, went together to the memorial for Ginsberg, it was read by Ferlinghetti. This was 1998, St. James's Memorial Church in Piccadilly. We went to this together with my late wife, Jill, and Ferlinghetti read this poem in memorial to Ginsberg. So it was in my mind in relation to this. And also just, it so happens that it was read at my son's wedding by my daughter as well. So I like it. So that's what I'm going to read. It's called Song, and it goes: the weight of the world is love. Under the burden of solitude, under the burden of dissatisfaction, the weight we carry is love. Who can deny? In dreams it touches the body, in thought constructs a miracle, in imagination anguishes till born, in human, looks out of the heart, burning with purity, for the burden of life is love. But we carry the weight wearily, and so must rest in the arms of love at last, must rest in the arms of love. No rest without love, no sleep without dreams of love. Be mad or chill, obsessed with angels or machines, the final wish is love. Cannot be bitter, cannot deny, cannot withhold if denied. The weight is too heavy. Must give for no return, as thought is given in solitude, in all the excellence of its excess. The warm bodies shine together in the darkness. The hand moves to the center of the flesh. The skin trembles in happiness, and the soul comes joyful to the eye. Yes, yes, that's what I wanted. I always wanted to return to the body where I was born. That's it.
Brilliant. Fantastic poem. Again, it's one of those things that I'd forgotten that I'd read, but then as soon as you started it off, it all came back, and I could remember every word.
The back of
yeah. My copy.
You know, sorry to say this, but I had one like yours, Tim, of the first ones, and it was autographed by Ginsberg.
Yeah.
Nicked. It got stolen from me, would you believe?
Oh.
You wouldn't think someone would steal something like that, but they did. So there you go.
Disgraceful. Totally disgraceful. Okay. Okay. Who we go next? Oh, right. Next we have Tish Camp from Gloucestershire, and she will round off the first. It's actually 3 segments, not halves. So she will round off the first third. Okay, over to you, Tish.
Okay, thank you. Yes, I'm originally from London, and I kind of would have been quite young during the Beat movement, or not born. But I kind of, when I'm beginning to think about back in, when I first started writing poetry, I was a 12-year-old punk in 1977, sitting outside a shop called The Last Resort down Petticoat Lane, Middlesex Street, and thought I was quite beat. But that says a 12-year-old running around in punk outfits. But no, so this has been a learning curve for me, and I'm hoping I'm going to honour Ferlinghetti and what he honoured. So there's two poems that I've done. One is from Ferlinghetti himself. Another one is from Diane de Prima, feminist beat poet, and another one that I've written for Ferlinghetti. So I'll start off with his A Far Rockaway of the Heart 2. Driving a cardboard automobile without a license at the turn of the century, my father ran into my mother on a fun ride at Coney Island, having spied each other eating in a French boarding house nearby, and having decided right there and then that she was for him entirely. He followed her into the playland of that evening, where the headlong meeting of their ephemeral flesh on wheels hurtled them forever together. And I, now in the back seat of their eternity, reaching out to embrace them. Thank you. I thought that was rather lovely. The next one is Diane de Prima. She is the wind. She is the wind you never leave behind. Black cat you killed in empty lot. She is smell of the summer weeds, the one who lurks in open childhood closets. She coughs in the next room, hoots, nests in your hair. She is incubus, face at the window. She is harpy on your fire escape marble figurine carved in the mantelpiece. She is cornucopia that wails in the night. Death grip you cannot cut away, black limpid eyes of mad girls singing carols behind mesh. She is the hiss in your goodbyes, black grain in green jade, sound from the silent koto. She is tapestry burned in your brain. The fiery cloak of feathers carries you off hills when you run flaming down to the Black Sea. Thank you. And this one is Ferlinghetti River, is what I've written this morning. Who, where, what happened to this man? 1 year and 100 more, and I'm Ferlinghetting this. Death brings everything eulogy. Everyone in end times, those times, beats on City Lights books, streets, salon chic. In paperback stores, these times looking back and towards. He heard a howl, harbored, anchored, set sail the boat, cruising Hudson, hands on jib, raising, pulling, future winds on his rivers, Capitano of more. Navigates Nagasaki to Pacifist Point, New in New York to Port, Mediterranean Tunis White, San Francisco Island, percussing de Prima, watches her floating bare. His cabin crew hip, drunk on danger, cocktails then and now, a Ginsberg gin, Kirsch of Kerouac, Corso bomb, sex on North Beach, sailor gals and men, sure leave to Poet Park, leave their mark. Activists alight in fires, bear truths and philosophy, dodge laws and hypocrisy, art in an anarchist antipathy, wars on words, papering these proclaimers, publish and print in socialist ink. This is finally sunk in, the Ferlinghetti feel in rivers, a poet courses through, tides and tripping on ropes to learn the holding of, walk new beat decks, stumbling in rigging, mouths export from rumbling, hip hold bold, soft behind soft zephyr. Thank you.
Well, great stuff. Thanks so much, Tish. So you're actually getting to grips with the beats for the first time. That's fantastic. That's one of the things. That's one of the things we hoped would come out of this. That people would, you know, engage and say, "Who are these guys?" You know. So that's brilliant. We are making good time. So we were thinking we'd keep going and perhaps have one break. So we'll go. If you're ready, Rog, we'll go to you, followed by Jackie Biggs, Erin Gannon, Rick Spisak, and Samantha Manzi, Pam Benjamin, Dave Irwin, Ash Kotak, Andy Talbot. We won't necessarily do all of those, but we may have a break in the middle rather than having two breaks. Okay, so Roger, I should also plug, as was one of the founder members of Rock Against Racism movement back in the 70s. It was so important in knocking back the National Front, who were making real gains at that time. And Roger helped organize both of those carnivals. Okay, over to you, Roger.
Okay, I'm going to start off by a poem by Jacques Prévert, a French poet, and this was the first book of poems I ever bought, 1963. The selections from his collection, Paroles. Of course, the great thing is translated by Ferlinghetti. And in the introduction, Ferlinghetti says that I translated these poems for fun some 15 years ago. They're still worth it. And I think that's true. And so I came to Lawrence this way. Pater Noster. Our Father, who art in heaven, stay there. And we'll stay here on earth, which is sometimes so pretty, with its mysteries of New York and its mysteries of Paris, at least as good as that of the old Trinity, with its little canal at Orc and its great wall of China, its river at Morlaix, its candy canes, with its Pacific Ocean and its two basins in the Tuileries, with its good children and bad people, with all the wonders of the world which are here, simply on the earth, offered to everyone, strewn about, wondering at the wonder of themselves, and daring not avow it, as a naked pretty girl does not show herself with the world's outrageous misfortunes, which are legion, with legionaries, with torturers, with the masters of the world, the masters with their priests and their traitors and their troops, with the reasons with the years, with the pretty girls and with the old bastards, with the straw of misery rotting in the steel of cannons. So that's that. Can I read a Lawrence poem as well?
Yeah.
Okay. Now my pronunciation is terrible, as you can tell from my tried French in that one. So, but I want to read this anyway. I love this poem. It's called Baseball Canto. Watching baseball, sitting in the sun, eating popcorn, reading Ezra Pound, and wishing Juan Marichal would hit a hole right through the Anglo-Saxon tradition in the first canto and demolish the barbarian invaders. With the San Francisco Giants take the field and everybody stands up to the national anthem, with some Irish tenor's voice piped over the loudspeakers, with all the players struck dead in their places, and the white umpires like Irish cops in their black suits and little black caps pressed over their hearts, standing straight and still like at some funeral or a Bellini bartender, all facing east, as if expecting some great white hope of the founding fathers to appear on the horizon, like 1066 or 1766, or all that, while Willie Mays appears instead in the bottom of the first, and a roar goes up as he clouts the first one into the sun and takes off like a foot runner from Thebes. The ball is lost in the sun. The maidens wail after him, but he keeps running through the Anglo-Saxon epic, and the Tito Florentis comes up, looking like a bullfighter in his tight pants and small pointed shoes. And the right field bleachers go mad with Chicanos and blacks and Brooklyn beer drinkers. Sweet Tito, suck it to him, sweet Tito. And sweet Tito puts his foot in the bucket and smacks one that don't come back at all and flees around the bases. He's like he's escaping from the United Fruit Company. As a gringo dollar beats out the pound and Sweet Tito beats it out like he's beating out usury. Not to mention fascism and anti-Semitism. And Juan Marico comes up and in the Chicano bleachers go loco again as Juan belts the first ball out of sight and rounds first and keeps going and rounds second and rounds third and keeps going and hits pay dirt in the roars of the grungy populace as some nut presses the backstage panic button for the tape recorded national anthem again to save the situation. But it don't stop nobody this time. In their revolution round the loaded white bases, in the last of the great Anglo-Saxon epics, in the Terratino Libre of baseball.
Yeah.
Thank you, Lawrence.
Brilliant. Thank you, Roger. I especially like that first one. It was a beautiful combination of sort of looking at the horrors of the world, but also celebrating the beauty and the joy of it. I think that was at the heart of Beat, really.
I think that's why Lawrence took the translations of it.
Yeah. I've got to go back. I've got a copy of his stuff upstairs. I'm definitely going to go back and read it again after that. Okay, what have we got? Oh, hang on, I'm just resetting that. Okay, cool. Okay, so we do. Is Siren John? Is he here?
It's Jackie Biggs next.
Yeah, I know that.
Oh,
but I'm not sure if we've got Siren.
Oh,
yes. We have. He's number 19. Yeah, don't worry.
Kieran, his name is Kieran O'Rourke.
Kieran, right?
Kieran.
Okay, Kieran O'Rourke. Okay, cool.
Confusing people with your Irish, Kieran.
Well, yeah, I do a Welsh pronunciation, don't I? That's how it would be pronounced if it was in Welsh. So, okay. So, is Jackie in the house?
Yep, I'm here.
Okay. Brilliant. Okay, Jackie, over to you.
Thanks, Tim.
Jackie's Cardigan in Wales.
That's right, on the western edge of the country here.
Brilliant.
It's lovely to see everyone. I was going to read a poem that's already been read, so I'm going to read something else. I was going to read a very popular Ginsberg poem called Song, which John has done. I mean, I could read it again, but I don't think there's any point really. I'll read a couple of other Ginsberg poems from the back of my little Howl book here that I haven't practiced. But that Song was quite a big influence on me, particularly because, well, it tends to be read at funerals. It was read at my sister's funeral quite a few years ago. And I've written a couple of poems in response to it as well. I'm not going to read those either. So let's read Wild Orphan. Blandly, mother takes him strolling by railroad and by river. He's the son of the absconded hot rod angel, and he imagines cars and rides them in his dreams. So lonely growing up among the imaginary automobiles and dead souls of Tarrytown to create out of his own imagination the beauty of his wild forebears, a mythology he cannot inherit. Will he later hallucinate his gods? Waking among mysteries with an insane gleam of recollection, the recognition, something so rare in his soul, met only in dreams, nostalgias of another life. A question of the soul, and the injured losing their injury in their innocence, a cock, a cross, an excellence of love, and the father grieves in Flophouse. Complexities of memory 1,000 miles away, unknowing of the unexpected youthful stranger bumming towards his door.
Brilliant. Great stuff.
And this one is In the Back of the Reel. The title's part of the poem. So, in the back of the railroad yard in San Jose, I wandered desolate in front of a tank factory and sat on a bench near the switchman's shack. A flower lay on the hay on the asphalt highway. The dread hay flower, I thought. It had a brittle black stem and corolla of yellowish, dirty spikes, like Jesus' inch-long crown, and a soiled, dry centre, cotton tuft like a used shaving brush that's been lying under the garage for a year. Yellow, yellow flower, and flower of industry, tough, spiky, ugly flower, flower nonetheless, with the form of the great yellow rose in your brain. This is the flower of the world. Thank you.
Brilliant. Again, one of those poems that just lodged in my mind that I'd forgotten I had there until you started reading it. Yeah. You have a minute or two more. Do you want to slot anything else in?
That's fine. That's fine.
You cool? Okay, brilliant. Okay, we'll have one or two more and then we'll have a break. Yeah, people sound with that. Okay, good. So, do we have Erin in the house? Erin Gannon from Glasgow.
I'm here.
Excellent, brilliant. We met up with Erin in, it was either the Brew or another one of those poetry nights. So this is one of the great things that Zoom has done, is actually connect up people poetically and politically all over the world, which is amazing, which we never used to be able to do. So, okay, Erin, over to you. Off you go.
Hi, Tim. Thanks for putting this together. All right, so I guess following the example of my predecessors in this event, I found out about the Beats and Kerouac and Ferlinghetti by way of the electric acid test, which I found at 14 years old in my parents' bookshelf. So it's all their fault. All of this is their fault. Yeah, so I read electric acid test and then went to my punk rocker friends and told them I wanted to do LSD. And they were like, Erin, what do you think we've been doing when we say we were taking acid? I was like, oh my God. So anyways, that started that. And of course, then I read On the Road and bam, down the rabbit hole I went. And I ended up in San Francisco because what do you do when you're like a little hippie punk girl in Chicago besides go to the West Coast? And there I fell into a randy crowd of gay men who are my friends to this day. And we had a series of adventures. And so I'm going to read a poem, two poems that I wrote. One was specifically for this event. And then I realized that it is partnered, that it or could easily partner with another poem that I've written about what I'm now calling, thanks to this event, my Ferlinghetti family. So this is the first installment of what is now probably a new collection called my Ferlinghetti Family Scrapbook. And here we go. Wish you were here, sending Irish cock. Musings on a postcard received from London. In my mind, this image I hold, 4 men swaying, arm in arm on the other side of my bar, singing, you picked a fine time to leave me, Lucille. This was my family, and those were the days. Now, James doesn't talk to anyone. Riley's dead. David's a truck driver. I wish I was there, too. Not that all these years away from each other haven't sucked, but these last few, they were not cool at all. And what am I doing in Chicago besides being sentimental and inaccurate? Let's talk about purgatory. The gray meat in the roulade, the flavorless stuffing, head cheese. Chicago is butcher to the world. It is from this dreck I humbly accept your offerings, and I am grateful. The bear bars are so far away, so I'm lonely. I've been told you're too old to wear cowboy boots. I've been told just try not to stand out so much. Plus, there's the waiting and the waiting and the waiting. Yep, that purgatory. You know, I've never been a big fan. And I'm dying. You're dying. We're dying. That's the first one.
Brilliant.
And thanks. And the second one is untitled thus far. It's just a Ferlinghetti family scrapbook. I don't really have a title for it yet. Okay, so it's the first section is called 12B Subner Street. The circle jerk was a bust, my love. All those postcards we placed tactically around Soma for nothing. No one came except our friends. Baby Blue, you with your camera. I'm still not sure if that was a good idea. But the video of us shooting vodka is one of our great archival moments. The wincing and the heft of the Smirnoff bottle. It lives in the realness, the historical feelness of our first Folsom Street fair. The stilted man on the street interviews where we anticipated your future career. Harnessed men, sign release forms. I waited, a celery stalk in my outlaw Bloody Mary. Autumn sunlight glistens off rubber and leather. And I harass the executioner swinging at the public flogging. My heckle still rings true. My dad hit me harder with his belt. Don't put it on stage if it's that sanctified. Folsom Street pleasure is for everyone, not just the whipper and the whipping boy. 289 8th Street. That one waitress came. What was her name? She borrowed my leather bustier and chained herself to the chain-linked wall, all up inside the rubber curtain door. Home in the wall. Homecoming in the wall. Cowboy Eric and I and Eugene played whatever we wanted to hear, mainly Keith Richards. The apex of a summer chugging, warm pitchers of beer, poppers kept the back of the bar busy. Meanwhile, Taxi Bob had money for shots, so the bell rang and rang. John Michael showed off the new patch for their newly formed MC, the goddamn independence. No motorcycle required. I took my finals in the school of pissing in the trough. You left your camera back at the house. There was dancing to do. So much dancing that day, the candle melted clean off that bar.
Yeah.
That song, that poem's about this great bar that I believe is still there called The Hole in the Wall. Anyways, yeah.
Right. I have been in Vesuvio's bar right next to City Lights. Yeah. Amazing. Okay.
I was a South of Market girl. I was in with the Leather Boys and the Bears.
Nice one.
I'm a biker, so that's why. Anyways, thanks for having me.
Oh, thanks for coming. Thanks so much. Brilliant. Okay. I think we'll have a break now, and then we'll kick off with Rick, after the break. Yeah.
How long?
People cool with it? Oh, let's say 5 minutes. 5 minutes, okay? Okay, 5-minute break. Go and have a drink or go to the loo or have a coffee, or we'll kick off again in roughly 5 minutes. Okay. Just
Hi, Richard. Hi. Were you playing music?
Yes, yes, yes. Yeah, we were. Who's that?
Great.
It's a disembodied voice. Okay, if we start settling back, I guess. Okay. Okay. How are we? Are we ready? Are we ready to kick off? Got 23 participants. All right. So we will. I'll just read out the next sort of 5 or 6, so that people have got a rough idea of when they're coming up. Been some cracking readings so far, I gotta say. It's been a brilliant hour or so, and lots of different renderings of different aspects of the beats as well. That's what I thought was really striking about this afternoon so far. Has been, we've had a whole sort of spectrum of various aspects. I thought we were going to be Ginsberg heavy, but actually we've been Ginsberg light, which is probably not a bad thing, to get a wider spread really of what the whole beat thing was about. And I'm glad that Erin linked up with Kesey and the acid tests, because that's the bridge really between the beats and, I hate the word hippies, the counterculture, between the beats and the counterculture. Neil Cassidy, Dean Moriarty of On the Road, yeah. And by the way, if nobody's read The Electric Kool-Aid Acid Test by Tom Wolfe, I recommend it. It's a fantastic book, which, yeah, there's a lot of adventures in there. Okay, so we're going to kick off with Pam Benjamin from San Francisco, followed by Dave Irwin.
No, sorry, Rick Spisak first.
Oh, damn. Sorry. Good God. I'd had you on at the end of the first lot, and now I'd gone on to the second lot. I'm terribly sorry. Rick from Tennessee, USA. Take it away, Rick.
Thank you so much. In boning up on my Ferlinghetti, I found that one of the poets that's mentioned quite frequently in connection with him is Francois Villon. And I thought that's a good way to go, because I'm sure so many people are going to be either reading Ferlinghetti or Ginsberg. I would go to one of the roots of Mr. Ferlinghetti's inspiration. So Francois Villon, I die of thirst beside the fountain. I die of thirst beside the fountain. I'm hot as fire. I'm shaking tooth on tooth. In my own country, I'm in a distant land. Beside the blaze, I'm shivering in flames, naked as a worm, dressed like a president. I laugh in tears. I hope in despair. I cheer up in sadness, hopelessness. I'm joyful and no pleasures anywhere. I'm powerful and lack all force and strength, warmly welcomed, always turned away. I'm sure of nothing but what is uncertain. Find nothing obscure but the obvious. Doubt nothing but the certainties. Knowledge to me is mere accident. I keep winning and remain the loser. At dawn I say, I bid you good night. Lying down, I'm afraid of falling. I'm so rich, I haven't a penny. I await on inheritance and am no one's heir. Warmly welcomed, always turned away. I never work, and yet I labor to acquire goods I don't even want. Kind words irritate me the most. He who speaks true deceives me the worst. A friend is someone who makes me think. A white swan is a black crow. The people who harm me think they help. Lies and truth today, I see they are one. I remember everything. My mind's a blank. Warmly welcomed, always turned away. Merciful Prince, may it please you to know I understand much, have no wit nor learning. I'm biased against all laws impartially. What to do next? Redeem my pawned goods again? Warmly welcomed, always turned away.
Fantastic. Absolutely fantastic. That was Francois Villon?
Si.
Great. I know next to nothing about Villon, so I obviously must repair massive gaps in my cultural grasp. So I shall be getting a copy.
Thank you.
Of this book straight away. Thank you very much, Rick. That was brilliant. Okay, so where are we again? Right. So Rick, followed by Pam, followed by Dave, followed by Ash, if he's here, followed by Andy. So we'll kick off then with Pam from San Francisco.
Hi. Like a beat poet, I am hungover because it's the morning and it's Sunday here. And I had the opportunity to have Allen Ginsberg as a professor at UC San Diego. Back in the early 90s, I graduated from UC San Diego in 96. And I think he taught a class in 94, 95 I took, and remarkable person. Also, Dan Langton was another beat poet that I had the pleasure of being instructed by. And he told stories about, Ferlinghetti. I got to meet him a couple times because, he was around. He's a cool guy. So I have one poem to read from Ferlinghetti called Dog. And then I wrote an homage poem to Ferlinghetti, lifting a couple of his lines. And I just really love how he wrote about San Francisco, and I live here and I love it here. Okay, so this is Dog. The dog trots freely in the street and sees reality. And the things he sees are bigger than himself. And the things he sees are his reality. Drunks in doorways. Oh, sorry. I'm so blind, I should get my glasses on, but I feel like that would be embarrassing. Drunks in doorways. Moons on trees, the dog trots freely in the street, and the things he sees are smaller than himself. Fish on newsprint, ants in holes, chickens in Chinatown windows. Their heads a block away. The dog trots freely in the street, and the things he smells something like himself. The dog trots freely in the street, past puddles and babies, cats and cigars, pool rooms and policemen. He doesn't hate cops. He merely has no use for them. And he goes past them and past the dead cows hung up whole in front of the San Francisco meat market. He would rather eat a tender cow than a tough policeman, though either might do. And he goes past the Romeo Ravioli factory and past Coit Tower, past Congressman Doyle. He's afraid of Coit Tower, but he's not afraid of Congressman Doyle, although he hears very discouraging, very depressing, very absurd. To a sad young dog like himself, to a serious dog like himself, but he has his own fire, wood to live in. He owns his fleas to eat. He will not be muzzled. Congressman Doyle is just another fire hydrant to him. The dog trots freely in the street and has his own dog's life to live and to think about. and to reflect upon. Touching and tasting and testing everything, investigating everything without benefit of perjury, a real realist with a real tale to tell, and a real tale to tell it with, and a real live barking democratic dog engaged in real free enterprise with something to say about ontology, something to say about reality and how to see it and how to be it, with his head cocked sideways at street corners, as if he is just about to have his picture taken for Victor Records, listening for his master's voice and looking like a living question mark into the great gramophone of puzzling evidence with its wondrous hollow horn, which always seems just about to spout forth some victorious answer to everything. Okay, so that's Ferlinghetti's poem. And here's my homage to him is much, much shorter. And it's quick. It's called Breakfast of Youth. I watched Thor walk his dog in the Tenderloin after making it rain. The dog trots freely in the street and sees reality. America, drunks in doorways, ants in holes, pool rooms, and policemen. He doesn't hate cops. Thor stepped in human shit. I mean, he knew it wasn't dog shit. He is a god. A god washing poop off his shoe is still a god. And this wasn't some Jesus thing. I didn't wash his feet. He lifts his shirt. Oh, nearly naked breasts. Your breath more than 51 degrees dangles, is the air. No one ever said, I wish it would have happened faster. You are the sprawl in my chest. You are the feeling that makes me believe in a God. It's your world. Show me where to sit. Yes, yes, and always yes. I am your yes. I didn't grow up here like a living question mark, a dog eating the breakfast of youth. Thanks. You guys are great. I'm really enjoying this. And go Liverpool today.
Hey,
you'll never
cool.
walk alone.
Brilliant. Thanks. Thank you ever so much for that, Pam. That's brilliant. Thank you. Okay, we're ranging wide across the planet here. So I'm just catching up with myself here. So that was Pam Benjamin. We now have Dave Irwin from Cardigan, followed, if he's here, by Ash Kotak from London, then Andy Talbert from England, and give me the pronunciation again, John.
Kieran, I think is the...
Kieran.
I quite like the Welsh, but Kieran is the...
Kieran, right. Kieran. I've got it. Okay.
Kieran in Scotland as well, you know.
Yeah. So followed by Kieran from Leitrim in Ireland, followed by Matteo from Portsmouth, Rebecca from Swansea, Des from Newport, Rhoda also from Swansea, and we'll finish with Dane from San Francisco, and then I'll wind us up at the end. Okay, so can we have Dave Irwin from Cardigan, Wales?
Hi, I'm actually live in Carmarthenshire, and it's I'm about 30 minutes drive from Dylan Thomas's Boathouse, and I was going to read Ferlinghetti's Underwear, but Derek already did that. But I would just like to make a shout for the influence of Dylan Thomas on the beats, and there were a couple of references in Derek's Underwear to Dylan Thomas towards the end of that poem. I'm going to go instead for Gregory Corso. Nobody's done Gregory Corso, and I've got my original copy, now over 45 years old, of Penguin Modern. Yeah, Tim, same book, and mine is about 45, 46 years old, and the pages are falling out. But I'm going to try and give this a go. The poem is actually about 5.5 minutes long. So if it's getting too much and you've had enough of me, just shout, Dave, shut your gob. I'll stop.
We'll just mute you, don't worry.
Yeah, mute me. Yeah, but I won't bloody know you've muted me. So I'll still be reading. Marriage. Should I get married? Should I be good? Astound the girl next door with my velvet suit and Faustus hood. Don't take her to movies, but to cemeteries. Tell all about werewolf bathtubs and forked clarinets. Then desire her and kiss her and all the preliminaries. And she going just so far and I understanding why. Not getting angry saying, you must feel, it's beautiful to feel. Instead, take her in my arms, lean against an old crooked tombstone and woo her the entire night, the constellations in the sky. When she introduces me to her parents, back straightened, hair finely combed, strangled by a tie, should I sit knees together on their 3rd-degree sofa and not ask, where's the bathroom? How else to feel other than I am, often thinking, Flash Gordon soap. Oh, how terrible it must be for a young man seated before a family and the family thinking, we never saw him before, he wants our Mary Lou. After tea and homemade cookies, they ask, what do you do for a living? Should I tell them? Would they like me then? Say, all right, get married, we're not losing a daughter, we're gaining a son. And should I then ask, where's the bathroom? Oh God, and the wedding! All her family and her friends and only a handful of mine, all scroungy and bearded, just waiting to get at the drinks and the food. And the priest, he looking at me as if I masturbated, asking me, do you take this woman for your lawful wedded wife? And I trembling what to say pie glue. I kissed the bride, all those horny men slapping me on the back. She's all yours, boy, ha, ha, ha. And in their eyes you could see some obscene honeymoon going on. Then all that absurd rice and clanky cans and shoes. Niagara Falls, hordes of us, husbands, wives, flowers, chocolates, all streaming into cozy hotels, all going to do the same thing tonight. The indifferent clerk, he knowing what was going to happen. The lobby zombies, they knowing what. The whistling elevator man, he knowing. The winking bellboy knowing. Everybody knowing. I'd be almost inclined not to do anything. But stay up all night, stare that hotel clerk in the eye, screaming, I deny honeymoon! I deny honeymoon! Running rampant into those almost climactic suites, yelling, radio belly, cat shovel. Oh, I'd live in Niagara forever, in a dark cave beneath the falls. I'd sit there, the mad honeymooner, devising ways to break marriages, a scourge of bigamy, a saint of divorce. But I should get married, I should be good. How nice it'd be to come home to her and sit by the fireplace, and she in the kitchen, aproned, young and lovely, wanting my baby, and so happy about me she burns the roast beef and comes crying to me, and I get up from my big papa chair saying, Christmas teeth, radiant brains, apple deaf. God, what a husband I'd make. Yes, I should get married. So much to do, like sneaking into Mr. Jones's house late at night and cover his golf clubs with 1920 Norwegian books, like hanging a picture of Rambo on the lawnmower, like pasting Tanu Tuva postage stamps all over the picket fence, like when Mrs. Kindhead comes to collect for the community chest, grab her and tell her there are unfavorable omens in the sky. And when the mayor comes to get my vote, tell him, when are you going to stop people killing whales? And when the milkman comes, leave him a note in the bottle. Penguin dust, bring me penguin dust. I want penguin dust. Yet if I should get married and it's Connecticut and snow and she gives birth to a child and I am sleepless, worn, up for nights, head bowed against a quiet window, the past behind me, finding myself in the most common of situations, a trembling man knowledge with responsibility, not twig smear, nor Roman coin soup. Oh, what would that be like? Surely I'd give it for a nipple, a rubber Tacitus, for a rattle, a bag of broken Bach records, tick Della Francesca all over his crib, sew the Greek alphabet on his bib, and build for its playpen a roofless Parthenon. No, I doubt I'd be that kind of father. Not rural, not snow, no quiet window, but hot, smelly, tight New York City. 7 flights up, roaches and rats in the walls, a fat Reichian wife screeching over potatoes, get a job! And 5 nose-running brats in love with Batman, and the neighbours all toothless and dry-haired like those hag masses of the 18th century, all wanted to come in and watch TV. The landlord wants his rent. Grocery store, Blue Cross gas and electric Knights of Columbus. Impossible to lie back and dream. Telephone snow, ghost parking. No, I should not get married. I should never get married. But Imagine if I were married to a beautiful, sophisticated woman, tall and pale, wearing an elegant black dress and long black gloves, holding a cigarette holder in one hand and a highball in the other, and we lived high up in a penthouse with a huge window from which we could see all of New York and even farther on clear days. No, can't imagine myself married to that pleasant prison dream. Oh, but what about love? I forgot about love. Not that I am incapable of love. It's just that I see love as odd as wearing shoes. I never wanted to marry a girl who was like my mother, and Ingrid Bergman was always impossible. And there's maybe a girl now, but she's already married. And I don't like men. But there's got to be somebody, because what if I'm 60 years old and not married, all alone in a furnished room with pea stains on my underwear, and everybody else is married? All the universe married but me. Ah, yeah, well, I know that were a woman possible as I am possible, then marriage would be possible. Like she in her lonely alien gourd waiting her Egyptian lover, so I wait, bereft of 2,000 years and the bath of life.
That's stupendous, David. That was a story of my life, that.
Well read.
Brilliant, brilliant. Again, that's one of the poems that as soon as you started, it started unfurling in my head. Yes, God, I read this 40 years ago. You know. Okay, yeah. Brilliant. Thank you ever so much. Right, let me get my list. My God. Right. So next we have Andy Talbert from England, followed by Ciaran O'Rourke from Ireland. Did I get it right? Did I get it right?
Yeah,
no.
It's a hard C, but Ciaran is grand. Yeah.
Ciaran, like I will get it right next time. So we'll and then followed by Matteo, Rebecca. Then we have Michael Sindler, I believe, was also from the States. Yes, of course. Yes, there you are. And so we'll slot you in, I think, after Des and before Rhoda. Okay, so we'll kick off then with Andy Talbot.
Hi. Can you hear me okay, yeah?
Yes, I can hear you. Yeah,
right,
yeah.
Brilliant. I'm just going to do like a little bit from Elegy for Neil Cassidy by Ginsberg, and then I've got another one that I'm going to do after that. Cool. Okay, Neil. Ethereal spirit, bright as moving air, blue as city dawn, happy as light released by the day over the city's new buildings. Maya's giant bricks rise rebuilt in lower east side windows, shine in milky smog. Appearance unnecessary now. Peter sleeps alone in the next room, sad. Are you reincarnate? Can you hear me talking? If anyone had the strength to hear the invisible and drive through Maya wall, you had it. What are you now, spirit? That was spirit in body. Thanks. And the next piece I'm going to do is Pull My Daisy, which is by Ginsberg, Carolyn and Cassidy. I believe it was written, I don't know the name for it, but that style where you see a line, you write a line, you see a line, you write a line, it gets passed around. I believe that's how it was written. Yeah, so I'm gonna give that a go. Pull my daisy. Pull my daisy, tip my cup. Cut my thoughts for coconuts. Jack my Arden, gate my shades. Silk my garden, rose my days. Bone my shadow, dove my dream. Milk my mind and make me cream. Hop my heart on, harp my height. Hip my angel, hype my light. Heal the raindrop, sow the eye, war the worm, work the wise. Stop the hawks, where's the wake, what's the box, how's the kicks? Rob my locker, lick my rocks, rack my lacks and lark my looks. Whore my door, beat my beer, crease my hair, bear my poor. Say my oops, orb my shell, roll my bones, ring my bell. Pork my parts and pop my pet, pork my pap, pit my plum. Thank you. Thanks for having me. This event's awesome. I'm loving it. It's brilliant. Oh, you're muted. Oops.
No, I just wanted to ask, what was that last one called?
Oh, that was Pull My Daisy.
Pull My Daisy, right. And that was a joint poem, as it
Yeah,
were.
yeah.
Ah, fantastic. Yeah. I haven't seen that. I must get hold of a copy of that as well. I'm going to have a tremendous number of books to buy after all this. So, bookmarks? Okay.
Pull My Daisy is a film, by the way.
Is it?
Yeah, yeah.
It's a film, and Dave Amram plays the music behind it.
Can you get it on YouTube, or do you need to get a DVD?
Yeah.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, it's on there.
I'll check that out.
Yeah.
Okay, sorry, somebody's trying to contact me. Right, so we have Kieran.
Well done, Tim.
That's great.
Right, so Kieran from am I pronouncing the Leitrim?
Yeah, exactly.
Leitrim. Good,
yeah,
good.
In Leitrim in Northwest Ireland.
We share a similar Celtic identity, divided only by a common language, to paraphrase whoever it was. Brilliant. So glad you could make it, Kieran. So take it away.
Yeah, well,
thanks. Can I just say, Tim, because you don't know Kieran, obviously, because you only just got his name, and he's here by my invitations, my friend in Ireland, but Kieran is one of Ireland's best up-and-coming poets. So I don't know if he's going to read his own stuff. Maybe he will, but I just want to say that he's really terrific poet.
Yeah. We did embarrassed him, isn't it?
And we are delighted to have him with us.
We are totally delighted, and we did do a bit of research. It's just the pronunciation that got me. No, Kieran.
And the overwhelming nature of having so many wonderful people here that has completely stymied Tim on this.
Indeed.
Death by blushing on my part, but thanks, Tim and Rhoda, for
no pressure, Kieran. No pressure. So.
You're out of time now.
Yeah, off you go.
Very happy to be here, and I've loved this international chorus of voices celebrating the beats and carrying the flame in the best way. So thanks to John for the invite, and to Tim and Rhoda for organising as well. I thought that I would read just the first few lines and then the last segment from Ferlinghetti's poem Populist Manifesto, and then read a short poem of my own. So this is Populist Manifesto by Ferlinghetti. Poets, come out of your closets, open your windows, open your doors. You've been holed up too long in your closed worlds. Come down from your Russian hills and telegraph hills, your beacon hills and your chapel hills, down from your foothills and mountains, out of your teepees and domes. And then the final section of that poem. I probably could have read the whole thing, but I didn't want to take up too much time. He finishes by saying, poetry still falls from the skies into our streets still open. They haven't put up the barricades yet. The streets still alive with faces, lovely men and women still walking there, still lovely creatures everywhere. In the eyes of all, the secret of all still buried there. Whitman's wild children still sleeping there, awake and sing in the open air. And a few years ago, I wrote a poem of my own, partly with Ferlinghetti in mind, although I didn't name him. I had a few American poets kind of hovering around the back of my mind. So this is To the Last Old Poet on Earth. When you cannot sing at midnight as the moon deep window darkens and the trees blow on the far avenues of San Francisco, speak your words instead, as slowly as you can, growing beautifully older with each low syllable, until the air is a page as ancient as you are, quivering and bare with the need you filled tonight for a voice with breath in it. And this way, the dead light of galaxies still will fall on the alleyways where our listening bodies hold back gently to wonder at that firm frailty in the wind they felt. And much later, as we wake by dawn to see the pale flame flicker on the world and the sun-soft window glow with air more nearly than we knew, but not unknown, we might say gladly to ourselves that we dreamt this once, and think of you, old poet, on your last earth, speaking to the stars. Thanks.
That was one cracking poem, Kieran, I got to say. They were both cracking, but that last one of yours was knockout. Totally knockout. Great. Right. I'm sort of timing people here, and it means I have to have 3 hands. Okay, so what we have next, we have Matteo from Portsmouth. We have Rebecca from Swansea. Let me check that I've got this absolutely right. Rebecca from Swansea, Des Manet from Newport, Michael Sindler, then Rhoda Thomas, Dane, and myself will close up. So I'd like to call on Matteo.
Hi.
Who was in Portsmouth and who read with us The Last Marxism, which was 2019, I think.
Seems like a world away now.
In London, on a quite a sunny day in a little sort of gazebo. So, Matteo, off you go, man.
Thank you very much. Thank you for having me. It's an honor to be here. I think I'm going to read two poems of my own, but the Beats were a huge influence on me when I started writing poetry, and I think I want to respond to what Tim was saying earlier about the kind of poetry as insurgency, insurgent poetry. So this is the first one. How that heart was stacked. How that heart was stacked against the dog or the sealess plain, how it kisses the lapwing's feet, the woodlouse's backs, how the ridges and lines and rows and layers of blue singing stone eyed the wave's scepter and the wind's nose. How they bent up and buckled, bowed, spilled, shat, sighed in metamorphic spasm, how the colourful angles of that screen show are lost on the dry flat, the hedgerow and path, how the tiny hands, hairs and faces resisted the smelly gift of death. From countless swords and tongues, how the colonial sand spills from houses now built on sad fens and wealds of green. How it smothers this land's valleys, hills, dries the wet mouth, the tearless eye, the steaming ears, all now like stolen figures in the museum, groped by wooden dentils, wooden lines, stained skins. Thank you. This next poem I wrote about the Berbice slave uprising in 1763 that happened in Guyana, which is where my mother is from, and I hope it can bring some of that revolutionary feeling relating to this idea of Ferlinghetti's insurgent poetry. Red Berbice. Burning the cardinal fields of sugar cane, now it pisses forth from spit-pale fibres. Burning the wet mother-laboured death plain, slim flames lip-suck Corinthian pyres. Wood fake, white stab, fictioned upon theft of flesh, of land, councils, armies chiming, voices of field workers, cut the first, full blessed, through the viscous night to land on sighing fists, tongues now unburied from divided soils, joined all around this red babice. Spilled to my head blood, penciled as geese toil to bring brownness of feathers o'er waters, filled is the red of the work. Dig up the chime my fathers slit to masters of labor time. Thank you.
Brilliant. Okay. We could slip a quick one in.
Yeah, I could do another quick one.
Okay, you got about 2 minutes.
Yeah. This is another poem kind of dealing with colonial legacy to some extent, called Beyond Portsdown Hill, just above Portsmouth here where I am. Already past in the golden light, falling, long across well-chewed grass, violent mound, already inert, useless before sealess eyeing. And bold is the soil, thin, dry dust here found, resting a moment on hot air, danced veil, hand on the warm mist, stretched across this valley's ground, joining each body from the fine earth, pale and interrupted by teeth, jump energetic yellow petals, stout orchids, purple and green palm lime scale. These sharpened teeth of flint, skulls of flint below, almost rounded flakes of flint underfoot, black, blue, orange, white, prone in cropped shadow. The teeth are aching in the coming of the night, put closely upon the hills and our dark eyes, where dies history's flashing hill light dot. Next to the dark green verge, butterflies shadowy spray, the chalk path in this light shines, tempting the future with old names and skies, having called me out skyward along chalk lines. Thank you.
Brilliant.
Keeping the alternative Portsmouth tradition going, Matteo.
Certainly.
I was going to say, I can see you looking nostalgic back there, John.
Remembering Portsdown Hill, yeah.
Yeah. No, it was a remarkable town, actually. Okay, so next will be Rebecca, followed by Des, followed by Michael. So Rebecca is a veteran of Swansea poetry circles. We met years ago at I believe the Talisman Poetry Night, although we knew each other from before then. So over to you, Rebecca.
Hi. So I've been checking out some of the women beat poets because you don't tend to hear so much about them. So I'm going to do a couple of them. And if there's time, one of my own as well. So this one just struck me as soon as I read it. It's by Barbara Guest. It's called Parachutes, My Love Could Carry Us Higher. I just said I didn't know. And now you are holding me in your arms. How kind. Parachutes, my love, could carry us higher. Yet around the net I am floating. Pink and pale blue fish are caught in it. They are beautiful, but they are not good for eating. Parachutes, my love, could carry us higher than this mid-air in which we tremble, having exercised our arms in swimming. Now the suspension, you say, is exquisite. I do not know. There is coral below the surface. There is sand and berries like pomegranates grow. This wide net, I am treading water near it. Bubbles are rising and salt drying on my lashes. Yet I am no nearer air than water. I am closer to you than land. And I am in a stranger ocean than I wished. Okay, so that was Parachutes, My Love Could Carry Us Higher. This one is by Diane de Prima. Yeah, it touched a nerve. So I'm going to read this one because it spoke to me. It's called Poem in Praise of My Husband. I suppose it hasn't been easy living with me either, with my peaks and ups and downs, my need for privacy, Leo pride, and weeping in bed when you're trying to sleep, and you interrupting me in the middle of 1,000 poems. Did I call the insurance people? The time you stopped a poem in the middle of our drive over the Nebraska hills and into Colorado, Odetta singing, the whole world singing in me, the triumph of our revolution in the air, me about to get that down, and you saying something about the carburetor, so that it all went away. But we cling to each other, as if each thought the other was the raft and he adrift alone, as in this mud house not big enough, the walls dusting down around us, a fine dust rain, counteracting the good high air and stuffing our nostrils. We hang our pictures of the several worlds, New York collage and San Francisco posters, set out our Japanese dishes, Chinese knives, hammer small Indian marriage cloths into the adobe. We stumble through silence into each other's gut, blundering through from one wrong place to the next, like kids who snuck out to play on a boat at night, and the boat slipped from its moorings and they look at the stars about which they know nothing to find out where they are going. So that was by Diane de Prima. And have I got time for a quick one of my own as well?
Yeah,
Is
yeah.
that okay?
Yeah, sure.
I thought I'd include this one because it's basically a hymn to bookshops, really, and the magic of words. And so that seemed appropriate with the City Lights Bookshop and Ferlinghetti. So this is called I Saw Salvation. I saw salvation in a bookshop, stroking the cracked spines with painted fingernails, her eyes thick with words. Saw birds circling overhead, apostrophe the sky. Late that night, watched as her hands sharpened to a point the moon, a comma with which to separate the stars, laughed as she joyfully flung words and space into being, and with a playful tip of the nib sent black ink spooling across the rustling sky. Thank you.
That's great. Thank you, Rebecca. And of course, there is Bookmarks bookstore as well, which is yet another, well, one of the few, in fact, the best socialist small bookshop. In fact, the best socialist bookshop, full stop.
You had to say that, Tim.
So I know. I'll take the money later, Dave. Okay, so we've got Des from Newport, followed by Michael from the States. Yeah, no, we'll slot you in, man. And then we'll have the last three, Rhoda, Dane, and I'll finish us off. So if we have my old friend and comrade Des Manet from Newport. Take it away, Des.
Hi, so the one I'm going to read is, I haven't heard it so far, so I'm hoping that I haven't missed it. Challenges to Young Poets by Lawrence Ferlinghetti. No. Obviously, it's obviously aimed at me because I'm only 18. I've just looked this way because I've had a fucking rough life. So, challenges to young poets. Invent a new language anyone can understand. Climb the Statue of Liberty, reach for the unattainable, kiss the mirror and write what you see and hear. Dance with wolves and count the stars, including the unseen. Be naive, innocent, non-cynical, as if you had just landed on Earth, as indeed you have, as indeed we all have, astonished by what you have fallen upon. Write living newspapers, be a reporter from outer space filing dispatches to some supreme managing editor who believes in full disclosure and has a low tolerance for level for hot air. Write an endless poem about your life on Earth or elsewhere. Read between the lines of human discourse, avoid the provincial, go for the universal, think subjectively, write objectively, think long thoughts in short sentences. Don't attend poetry workshops, but if you do, don't go to learn how to, but to learn what's important to write about. Don't bow down to critics who have not themselves written great masterpieces. Resist much, obey less. Secretly liberate any being you see in a cage. Write short poems in the voice of birds. Make your lyrics truly lyrical. Birdsong is not made by machines. Give your poems wings to fly to the treetops. The much quoted dictum from William Carlos Williams, no ideas but in things, is okay for prose, but it lays a dead hand on lyricism since things are dead. Don't contemplate your navel in poetry. Think the rest of the world is going to think it's important. Remember everything, forget nothing. Work on a frontier if you can find one. Go to sea or work near water and paddle your own boat. Associate with thinking poets, they're hard to find. Cultivate dissidence and critical thinking. First thought, best thought may not make for the greatest poetry. First thought may be the worst thought. What's on your mind? What do you have in mind? Open your mouth and stop mumbling. Don't be so open-minded that your brains fall out. Question everything and everyone. Be subversive, constantly questioning reality and the status quo. Be a poet, not a huckster. Don't cater, don't pander, especially not to possible audiences, readers, editors, or publishers. Come out of your closet, it's dark in there. Raise the blinds, throw open your shuttered windows, raise the roof and screw the locks from the doors, but don't throw away the screws. Be committed to something outside yourself. Be militant or ecstatic. To be a poet at 16 is to be 16. To be a poet at 40 is to be a poet. Be both. Wake up and pee. The world's on fire. Have a nice day.
That was spectacular. That was totally spectacular. It was brilliant. And the best advice to a young poet that I've yet heard, I got to say. Brilliant. Thank you so much, Des. Okay, Michael, I forgot which part of the States you're from now.
I'm in Denver. And which, of course, Ginsberg used to live like 2 blocks down the street from me this way, and obviously Kerouac and Neil Cassidy, who's the patron saint of Denver, and woman who we haven't heard from yet, the youngest of the Beats, Ann Waldman, who was kind enough to sign this for me, and is still running the Jack Kerouac School of Disembodied Poetics right up the road.
Wow.
And Boulder right now is probably more than anybody else keeping the whole School of the Beats alive. So, and I'm about to be late for something, so I'm just going to real quick read a little Ann Waldman out of this called Write, R-I-T-E, by the way, not with the W. Working with willow rods, that's the method, bringing great bundles up, put on the ground, scattering them, pronounce them, saying, here's one, here's another one, here's one there, over there. Willow rods, very consoling, will clear the ground. You don't have to be a Scythian. And then the ones behaving more like women use a different method. They take a piece of the inner bark of a lime tree, cut it into many pieces, which they keep twisting and untwisting around their fingers as they make effigies of themselves, willow rods of women, saying, there's a turn, there's a turning, there's a rowdy one, there's a moist one, there's one we lost to negligent wind, another one burned up, one folded down a sparrow's cheek. How many turnings in a twisty one? 1,000,000, more than you can ever hold, makes the pronouncers happy, surveyors of tractor and sage. And when all goes out, remember eclipse telling you this could all go out. Women too, women go out. But for love and mystery, willow rods, you know this, women, to fool the hearts of men, staying up all night. Notice the moon and its macabre signal and hemp vapor tints on the horizon. Walk upside down in the footprints of the living. And that's from Trickster Feminism, which came out in 2018. And thank y'all. This has been a really wonderful event. I got a bump, so y'all take care.
Brilliant. Thank you. Thanks. Glad you could make it, Michael. And brilliant.
Thanks for inviting me.
No, that's cool. Hope you make whatever appointment you're late for.
Okay.
Cheers, man. Okay, I've realized that I cut Des short. He was going to do another poem. So, Des, come back, man. Please.
Sorry about that.
No, sorry.
Sorry. That's great. That's very English. What I was going to do is just to try and bring things up to date. This is just to show that the beat goes on, just like my love everlasting. This is a poem of my own, which was published in an anthology of beat poetry in 2017. It's an American anthology called How Well You Walk Through the Madness, an anthology of beat, and it was by Weasel Press in the States. This one's called Desolation. Stars pour out of coffee cups onto my table and drip into the chairs next to me. Caffeine infected, they talk incessantly about themselves, their plans, their dreams, their schemes, their affectations. They're style obsessed with the look of desolation, of things that fall apart, of built-in obsolescence. They mistake me for a kindred spirit, but I am merely fueled on spirits meaner than a mere caffeina. I am the scion of real self-neglect, a carelessness in my denemo which goes beyond the rat-a-tatteredness of trendy hipster fashionistas. I really choke on my own vomit. I'm the unseen gate crusher at every party, the last guest to leave, the one still drinking in the morning after. No hangovers for me, no painkillers with my coffee. I imbibe my passion just like my vodka. Neat, neat, neat. I am the one night stand that makes you breakfast in your own kitchen whilst you're seeing double and still bitching about the hangover from the night before. And I won't leave my telephone number, as this was just a place for slumber and you were only slumming it anyway. And I have a greater, more self-destructive hunger to race towards the end of days.
That was something. That was really something. Cool, man. Right. We're coming now into the final stretch. So I should say that the real impetus for this was Rhoda Thomas, who sort of basically kicked my ass and said, look, we need to get something organized. And I said, well, no, we've only got a few days. We can't do it. And she said, bollocks, go on. And so we did it. And so I want to call on Rhoda now to do a quick or a reading. Rhoda.
Thank you. I'm glad it's worked. So it's been wonderful, everybody coming on board so quickly. Wonderful. Okay, I want to say a bit about the women, because there were quite a few women around the sort of beat movement, and they didn't all come to great ends. I think there was a struggle for women to be creative, to be sexually free like the men. They couldn't go on the road in the same way, and so on. And some of them had families who, particularly ones who came from sort of white middle class families, who put a lot of pressure on them, and sometimes they ended up in psychiatric institutions or, to sorry ends. I mean, Joan Vollmer, some of you may know, was shot by her husband William Burroughs, or her partner William Burroughs. Joyce Johnson was one who fought and wrote about what happened to some of the women, and she was in a relationship with Kerouac and walked down the road, the day that his On the Road came out. But some of them struggled to for the rest of their lives to you know, get out of the shadow of being women associated with the Beats, but not strong enough in their own right to be seen as equal. And that, I think, is a pity. And Carolyn Cassidy, who was married Neil Cassidy, who you know, traveled with Kerouac. I mean, one of the ways I think she's written about that since was that she was living with them both, and that it was only when Cassidy said, well, you're having a lot of trouble with me, why don't you sleep with Kerouac as well, that she felt actually empowered, starting to sort of be herself. So the different ways that women found to be themselves it has been of interest to me. Elise Cowan was associated with Ginsberg, initially had a year's relationship with him, and then he fell in love with Peter Orlovsky and lived with him. And she's always carried, I mean, you know, some of us might know, you know, it's like to feel you love somebody but they don't really want you, and she found that difficult to break away from. And she did have lesbian relationships as well, and then she had she went in for an abortion and they took out her whole womb, and eventually, and her parents tried to institutionalize her. She was in and out of hospital, and she jumped through a 7-floor high window to her death, and so on. This is one of her short poems. She was mad about Emily Dickinson and had a fantasy about that link. Emily, come summer, you'll take off your jeweled bees, which sting me. I'll strip my stinking jeans, hand in hand. We'll run outside, look straight at the sun a second time and get tan. So that's Elise Nada Cohen. But as many people have already highlighted, Diane de Prima did become, in her own right, she was more linked to Leroy Jones, Amiri Bakari in New York and Harlem and so on to begin with. And she, but eventually it was interesting that Rebecca read a poem about her husband, how she felt about it. She had a 40-year marriage, and she did have 5 children and grandchildren, not all with her husband, I hasten to add, but perhaps some of them before she married him. But she had a lot of stability. She ended up teaching and writing, you know, for the rest of her life, and only died recently. Part of this agency versus victim, or only an appendage to the men, was one of the things that in order to become a bohemian was harder for women. And she wrote, what I do know is that choosing to be an artist, writer, dancer, painter, musician, actor, photographer, sculptor, you name it, choosing to be any of those things in the world I grew up in, the world of the 40s and early 50s, was choosing as completely as possible for those times the life of the renunciant, life of the wandering sadhu, itinerant saint outside the confines and laws of that particular and peculiar culture. And, you know, often they stepped out of all the frameworks of their lives, and often a lot of hardship and negativity towards them as women, particularly from their family. And I'd just like to read one poem on, you know, a kind of very positive note. She moved from New York, where she had run a Poets Theatre and Poets Press and so on, and she moved in 1961 to San Francisco. And she said, I moved here. When I came to San Francisco in 1961, I came to a magical place. I moved here in 1968, and I brought with me 14 grown-ups, so-called, and all their accompanying kids and pets, horns and typewriters, and at least 1 rifle. And here is her poem, which I thought was a good one to end towards the end. It's about the bookshop that Ferlinghetti started and ran. City Lights, 1961. This is her poem. Going there for the first time, it was so much smaller then. That crowded downstairs full of poetry racks, of tattered little mags against the wall, those rickety white tables where folks sat reading and writing. And Vesuvio's was like an adjunct office. Arriving again a year later, 2 kids in tow, Lawrence gave me a huge stack of his publications. I've got books, he said, like other people have mice. and North Beach never stopped being mysterious when I moved out here in 1968. That publishing office on Filbert and Grant was a mecca, a place to meet up with my kids if we got separated during one of those innumerable demonstrations. Though Lawrence worried, told me I should keep them out of harm's way at home. I thought they should learn whatever it was we were learning. Office right around the corner from the bead store where I found myself daily picking up supplies. How many late nights did we haunt the store, buying scads of new poems from all corners of the earth, and then head to the all-night Tower Records full of drag queens and revolutionaries to get a few new songs and dig it. City Lights still here, like some old lighthouse, though all the rest is gone. The poetry's moved upstairs, the publishing office right there now too, and crowds of people 1/3 my age or less still haunt the stacks, seeking out voices from all quarters of the globe.
Nice one.
It was fantastic, Rosa. Fantastic. Brilliant, brilliant research, brilliant.
Great stuff, great stuff. Okay, we're beginning to re-enter the stratosphere. So back to San Francisco and back to Dane Ince, please.
I was a teenager in Texas and a staff member at a Pacifica Foundation radio station, KPFT, that was blown off the air by the KK bombs twice. What they called radical seemed ordinary to me, a way of life, the way, the Tao. When I came to California, I thought, what powers have kept this nirvana from me? It was me all along. I kept myself prisoner in my unhearing and unseeing and unloving, untouching blossom petals fall to the ground. I stand here now, beggar's cup in hand, lifted up, eyes down to sidewalk. Listen for the coin to fall in cup, to renew, filled with mourning. For now, we are at the edge of new day. For my own widowhood, I know now a thing. Brought low, burning the candle, mirrors covered, I remember and humbly recite Kaddish in my heart. This end is this beginning. Consider what I will do now. Consider what we will do now. We sit here in Shiva, or whatever name you choose to call this human act, in this tribute for LH. I live here in this town, the place people call the city, a name that makes people laugh of those who have lived in cities, knowing it as a town, a village. I have been nurtured by the cool and wide open fog. I breathe the same air as a Larry I never knew, sleeps now, soul sings loud as ever, if you have an ear to hear. Lawrence Ferlinghetti poem, Queens Cemetery, Setting Sun. Airbus ride from JFK, cruising through Queens, passing huge, endless cemetery by Long Island's old expressway, once a dirt path wheelless for wheelless Indians. Myriad small tombstones tiled up, gesturing statues on parapets, stone arms or wings upraised, lost among illegible inscriptions, and the setting yellow sun painting all of them on one side only with an ochre brush. Rows and rows and rows and rows of small stone slabs tilted toward the sun forever, while on a far horizon, Manhattan, great stone slabs, skyscraper tombs, parapets casting its own long black shadows. Over all the long-haired graves, the final restless place of old country potato farmers, dustbin pawnbrokers, dead Dagos, Dublin bouncers, tinsmiths, blacksmiths, and roofers, house painters and house carpenters, carpenter makers, cabinet makers and cigar makers, garment workers and streetcar motormen, railroad switchmen and signal salesmen, swabbers and sweepers and swampers, steam fitters and key punch operators, ward healers and labor organizers, railroad dicks and small-time mafiosi, shopkeepers and saloon keepers and doormen, icemen, middlemen and con men, housekeepers and housewives and dowagers, French housemaids, Swedish cooks, Brooklyn barmaids, Bronxville butlers, opera singers and dandy dancers, pitchers and catchers in the days of ragtime baseball, pool room hustlers and fight promoters, Catholic sisters of charity, parish priests and Irish cops, Viennese doctors of delirium, now all abandoned in eternity, parcels in a dead letter office, inscrutable addresses on them, beyond future deliverance in America, wheeling past them and disappearing oblivious into East River's echoing tunnels down the great American drain. Thank you.
That's brilliant, Dane. Thank you so much. And thanks for zoning in from San Francisco at a commemoration of a poet who, more than any other poet, to me anyway, symbolizes that city and symbolizes the whole ethos that goes with it. Okay, I just want to say a few things in winding up, and I just want to read one short poem by Ferlinghetti. I just wanted to say it's been a fantastic afternoon. It has been much better than I was ever expecting it to be, with poets from America, poets from San Francisco, poets from Ireland, Scotland, Wales, England, India. You know, we've had a hell of an afternoon, really cracking afternoon. And I want to just restate the profoundly political nature of what Ferlinghetti stood for. Not only was he a great poet, he was a socialist, he was a political activist, central figure in changing the cultural face of America forever. And City Lights used to publish a thing that they called a journal for the protection of all beings. And they published it from time to time to show that the revolutionary spirit was alive and well. And it was called On the Barricades. And the first edition was published after the May events of 1968, where students fought the police on the streets of Paris and where the biggest general strike in world history up to that point had brought a major European country to the verge of revolution. And the journal included a wonderful piece by Ferlinghetti that began with the sentence, "I persist in thinking that the place of the poet at the moment is in the street." And that's equally true today. And in 2007, he wrote the poem Pity the Nation. And that addressed America, but it does address America today, but it equally well addresses Britain. And it goes like this: pity the nation whose people are sheep and whose shepherds mislead them. Pity the nation whose leaders are liars, where sages are silenced, and whose bigots haunt the airwaves. Pity the nation that raises not its voice except to praise conquerors and acclaim the bully as hero, and aims to rule the world with force and by torture. Pity the nation that knows no other language but its own, and no other culture but its own. Pity the nation whose breath is money and sleeps the sleep of the too well fed. Pity the nation. Oh, pity the people who allow their rights to erode and their freedoms to be washed away. My country, tears of thee, sweet land of liberty. And I would finish by saying it's at times like these, precisely at times like these, times of acute crisis, of pandemic, of climate chaos, and economic and political crisis. It's in these times that the ruling class becomes unable to rule in the old way. And that once they're ruled, the people who Frantz Fanon, the great Frantz Fanon, called the wretched of the earth, once they decide that they too are not prepared to be ruled in the old way, that they are not prepared to have the knees of liars, cheats, and charlatans pressed into their necks, then, or rather now, revolutionary change, I believe, becomes possible. And Ferlinghetti would have said with the American revolutionary Joe Hill of the Wobblies, the IWW, that the proper way to mark his passing is not to mourn, but to organize. And the true place of poets in times like these is in the fight against oppression. The great revolutionary Leon Trotsky said, art might not be able to make the revolution, but like a swallow, it can herald the oncoming of spring. And poetry can create a radical political culture that is collective, which can help us understand the world in which we live, and more importantly, show us how to change it. So I want to end by saying, rest in power, Lawrence. We celebrate your extraordinary life. We recommit ourselves to carry on the struggle against war, injustice, imperialism, and capitalism, which was such a central part of your work. So thank you, everybody, for taking part in this tribute, and let us now proceed to take the struggle forward. So thank you, comrades and friends. Thank you. And